Well, Nicole, welcome to the journey. So we have Nicole Bennett with us today, and let me just explain a little bit about what the journey is about. The journey is just a show that really has guests on that we either explain about their own personal stories of how they have either had obstacles in their life and then they failed forward, or as they have been navigating through life. They felt maybe they were called in a particular direction to either help out or get involved with something or make a difference in the world based upon a need that they saw, and then just coming and sharing their experience with that as they've traveled their own life's journey. So that's essentially what the journey is about. Every week it's a little bit different, but that's the simple pattern. So welcome, and glad you could be with us today. I know we met, I think, for the first time last January at the Parent University.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yes.
at Lincoln Middle School. Brian Weevil was put that on, and I'm pretty sure we had a pretty bad snowstorm the night before, and we were all questioning if we were even going to meet that day. So but it seemed like we had a lot of the people, a lot of the educators that were there, but then unfortunately we didn't have as many students and parents show up as I know that they're hoping to in the future. But um, if you could just tell us a little bit about yourself before we jump into your story. What does Nicole do for fun when you have an opportunity to have fun? What do you do for fun?
Let's see, for fun. So I have two dogs, which if you hear them, I'm gonna apologize ahead of time.
Okay.
So I have two dogs, and I like to spend time with them. So running, hanging out with them. I'm newly married, so my husband and I like to go out to eat, travel. I'm a huge traveler. My life's goal is just to fill up the passport as much as I can.
Okay.
I like to read. I joined a book of the month club. So that's been really fun during quarantine to like get excited about the mail and what new books I have going on. So yeah, so that's what I do for fun. I have siblings, younger siblings, two of them, two sisters. And so they keep me very entertained and involved in younger folks. They made me join TikTok, so that's something
Oh,
that I
okay.
did during quarantine. So yeah, so one of them just got engaged, so we have a wedding to plan. So I'm really
Oh,
excited about that.
nice.
I like to plan and be organized, so yeah, so I'm really excited about that too.
Good to. So if we looked on your bookshelf, what would be one of your books that stand out? What would be a book that we would see on your bookshelf that we know that is one of your favorites because it's been read or it's bent over and creased a few times?
Okay, so I'm in my own office. This is my wedding present. My husband made me my own office
Oh,
where
cool.
no one is allowed. No dogs, no boys, no one else. So that's a great question. To Kill a Mockingbird is my very favorite book of all time.
Okay.
Um, let's see here. Know My Name by Chanel Miller is a book about a survivor of sexual assault. So that is a book that I have marked up, written, recommended very, very highly of. And Untamed by Glennon Doyle. I think
Okay.
that is my most highlighted book. I
Okay.
am absolutely obsessed with her. Her other books, I have them on reserve at the library. I'm just waiting for them to come in. But those I feel like are really, they're have feminist perspectives in her book. And it's parenting, it's having faith. It has so many cool aspects that I think everybody from all walks of life could find. So
Well, my daughter is she's an avid reader, and so similar to her father, and I recommended for her to read that book this summer during quarantine. So as she was taking one of her summer classes, she's finishing up undergraduate school right now, and that was one of her books that she read as well. So she enjoyed it as she was reading through it. I was asking her different things about it, so she liked that. So let me ask you about traveling. So a place that stands out when you were traveling, what's a place that stood out to you that I mean, I imagine you've been to many beautiful places, but what's a place that kind of surprised you, either in beauty or the people or culture, or it surprised you?
So I picked two.
Okay.
My first one I would say was DC. So both of these places I went to in the same summer, so it's kind of a really cool thing. My sister had a basketball tournament, and I've always wanted to go, and so I'm like, oh, I'll go to the basketball tournament. I'll come watch. I'll do whatever, but sightsee the whole time as well. But I love politics. I like rules, order, policy, protocol. So when I went to DC, I'm like, oh my goodness, it's laid out by the alphabet and the numbers and like cross streets. So A Street crosses with 10th Avenue, and like it just, the way their city is organized was great. And then just all of the museums, so much history, to be able to see like women's right to vote, to be able to like actually look at the document that was signed so women get the right to vote, and to be able to see our constitution and dinosaurs and really anything that you could care about, there's something for you there. So I really liked there. And then that same summer I did kind of like an individual missions trip. So I was in graduate school and I really wanted to get more of a macro view and understand really how large the world is, and I'm only one person in this great big world. So I traveled to Ghana. So they had multiple places that you could travel, but just happened in that month that Ghana was a choice. And so I traveled to Ghana. I was there almost 3 weeks in a village called Hohoi. And so I got to, social workers and counselors are not professions in Ghana and in the village that I was in. So they said, well, you can go into school. So you can be in a school, you can do groups, so you can still do what you do. It's just the children aren't going to know feelings. They're not going to know things kind of how you do them. And so my goal was to try and teach teachers skills that they could use. So coping skills, emotional regulation, feelings, things that I could tangibly leave there to try to have teachers still kind of fill my role, I guess.
Mhm.
And that was amazing. When I left, they gave me, I don't have it in here right now, but they gave me, it's called a kente cloth. And it was like an honor to be able to have one. It's an extremely expensive cultural piece. And they did an entire assembly for me to thank me. And all the kids said blessings upon my cloth. And it was amazing. Anybody that will ever listen, I talk, all of my family say like, wow, she went to Africa one time. But it will forever have changed my heart, the way I view the world. They were just so amazing. So yeah, those would be my two places.
Well, that well the your African trips just sound like it was a pretty phenomenal. And you were how old were you and what year were you in school?
So I was a senior. It was my last year of graduate school, and I did it in the summer, so 2014.
Okay.
And it was cool. It was my first time I had traveled independently. So
Oh, okay.
my mom had a really rough time with me traveling to the other side of the world almost. And so we got to communicate via email. So they are, this, I think 6.5 hours, if I remember correctly, ahead. So my mom, we talk every single day on the phone. And so my mom was very anxious about my trip. And so I emailed her while I was there. However, in Hawaii, they do kind of rolling outages. So for like 3 days, there was no electricity. So there's no way I could contact her. But I thought, oh, she'll be fine. I'll contact her when I can. I didn't know how long the power is going to be out. And this was when there was the Ebola outbreak in Ghana. It wasn't in Hawaii, but it was still somewhat close. And so the Peace Corps contacted my mom because I was on a list of people traveling to Africa. So they contacted her to say that there was an Ebola outbreak, and if you have any concerns, this is the number to follow. Well, the fact that I hadn't contacted my mom, and it just so happened it was an automated call, it had nothing to do with where I was. My mom for 3 days was very distraught, but ended up okay. I was fine. I didn't even know that there was a concern.
Sure.
So I got to do lots of cool things within my program too. So they're so thankful that you come to help and to try to help better their education system. So the people who are in charge of the program, I would do counseling in the morning, and then they would take me. I got to see this large waterfall in Ghana, pottery classes. I got to meet a bone doctor. They really want you to see as many different aspects outside of your culture, just so you have an appreciation and an understanding. And so you get to really be immersed. You learn languages. So every night you take a language class, which we still did by candle, even when we had no electricity, to speak a way and try to really relate to the students you're interacting with. You appreciate them. So yeah, it was a really cool experience.
Oh, it sounds like it was just amazing. Where did you get your master's?
I got my master's in Loyola. So I started at George Williams College my first 2 years. And then I really felt as my plan was to be an independent practitioner. And so Loyola seemed more suited for what I wanted to do, because I knew once I got my master's, you're really on your own. There's nobody to really help you and to guide you. You have supervision, obviously, but Loyola had actual people practicing. So they have their private practice in the morning, they'll teach in the afternoon, or vice versa. And so I really liked that hands-on experience. It was more child and family focused, which is what my specialization is in. And it was an amazing program. So Loyola, so go Ramblers.
Yeah, and it sounds like it just the fact that you had that opportunity and you chose to take it, just and those are those things where you just never know how, you know, you committed 3 weeks. You said 3 weeks, right? You were over
Yeah,
there for 3 weeks.
yeah,
Yeah, 3 weeks to being there, but what you get for it is amazing. It ends up, as they say, priceless, right? That to be able to have those experiences, and it probably also had to do with how you did your 3 weeks while you were there. I mean, because it sounds like you try to get as much as you possibly could out of this experience as well.
yes, and I wanted to try to make sure that I was going and learning. My whole goal was to learn. Obviously, I wanted to assist, but I have a profession that doesn't exist in their country, so maybe it's not even needed. So going and seeing kind of what the kids needed or what staff needed, like domestic violence. There's not a domestic violence shelter, for example. So teachers kind of assist students with that. So I really, really tried to just go and learn and listen and not push an agenda, not have a, um, I don't know, I read lots of reviews and blog posts, and I really just wanted to try to go and learn and try to help the best way that I could. But yes, like you said, I was the one who was helped. When I came away from the experience, it was that I felt more impacted than maybe I feel like I did to others. But
Sure, sure. So, kind of stepping back a little bit. Well, I have to ask. So, your husband's first name?
my husband's first name is Dominic.
Dominic. And so, is he a carpenter? Or what is you said he built you an office? So, that implies to me that he's a carpenter. But what is it? What does Dominic do?
So Dominic is not a carpenter.
Oh, okay.
He, by day he is a liquor rep for a company outside of Rockford,
Okay.
but then by night he's a DJ. So
Oh,
uh,
okay.
various skills. He's an amazing salesman, but he has the best way of talking to people and relating to people. He is the most passionate person and patient person I've ever met, which is why me being a social worker, I feel like it works out really, really well. That he has a very nice way that he handles me, just very so slightly. So
There you go. Well, congratulations on your guys' marriage. And so Nicole, are you from the Rockford area, or are you a transplant? So where'd you grow up?
yeah, so I born and raised in Rockford. I attended Jackson Elementary School, and I actually attended Lincoln, where I work, and so that's kind of a cool thing. And then my family moved, so I went to Winnebago for high school.
Okay.
Um, After high school, I still lived in the area. I had a grandpa that was really, really ill, so I didn't go away to school. I stayed here at Rock Valley to be able to take care of my grandpa until he passed away. So I got my associates here, and then I went to Illinois State for my undergrad, which is in sociology, and then eventually went on to get my master's at Loyola.
Gotcha. Okay. So our backgrounds are not that, well, a couple years difference, but not that different. I actually grew up in Rockford, went to Hallstrom, which is not a grade school anymore, but they do, I think, homeschool co-ops there. And
Mhm.
then I would have gone to Lincoln, but that's when we moved out to McChesney. Um, and I graduated from Harlem, went to Rock Valley, and then Illinois State, and got a degree in psychology. And then and then I and then after that worked for a couple of years, and then went to U of I to get my master's degree in social work. So what led you to want to do social work? How did that all come about?
So at Winnebago, so when I was in middle school, like I was not a very good student. I didn't take school serious. I was one of those kids that showed up and someone would say like, all right, we're gonna take our test. I'm like, oh, there's a test today? Well, okay. So I just wasn't a very engaged student. When we moved to Winnebago, I had some amazing teachers at Winnebago, and I got re-engaged in learning, and then it became my goal to do the best that I can, because I felt like I kind of had to make up for that time that I wasn't necessarily doing as well as I could have. And I had some good teachers that really pushed the idea of college, and like it's not that difficult to be able to get into college. Like you could figure it out. You have quite a few years to do that. So I decided, okay, I want to be an elementary education teacher. So I got a scholarship from Winnebago to be able to go to Rock Valley to do that. I entered classes, and after a week, I think week one, so I went twice. I'm like, this is not at all for me. I knew I wanted to work with kids. It just wasn't for me. So I looked at what classes were available, and I had taken an introduction to sociology class at Winnebago, and I loved it, and I really excelled in it. So I thought, oh, I'll take sociology. So I took sociology that semester, and I took another class called social problems. And the teacher, Jenny Kaczynski, is one of my all-time favorite people. And she made the class so just like you wanted to be involved. And one of her requirements was you had to volunteer for 10 hours. So I kind of got last pick, and there was a place called Mother House Crisis Nursery, which still exists today through Children's Home and Aid. And so I don't know what a crisis nursery is. So I go, and it was awesome as a crisis nursery can be. But it's a program where children can go up to age 6. They can go for 72 hours. They could go as short as an hour, but it's people from all walks of life. So if somebody has a substance abuse appointment that they need to not be able to take their children to, or they have a housing appointment, or maybe today was a really rough day and they just really need a break. So they're going to have their kids go overnight, and it's trained professionals, all background checked. They have food, clothing, games, bathing, all of that really takes care of kids, so parents can have a break. And so I liked their program so much that there were so many different children that needed assistance, but their whole common ground was kind of this agency, and like it really surrounded them. And so when I was younger, I had a person that used to say children should be seen and not heard. And what I loved about Mother House was, no, you are seen and you are heard, and you matter, and we will make sure that you matter. Your family matters, and it was like kind of a wraparound service. So then I decided, okay, well, I'll get my degree in sociology. And so I really liked studying children and doing research, because I like research, assessments, things like that really could figure out what were the needs of kids. And if we don't ask them questions and we don't involve them in the services we decide for them, is basically how our system is kind of set up. We don't know what they need, or we don't know what, what's on their heart. So I got my degree in sociology. From being at Illinois State, I had a teacher that was like, do an internship. If you can do an internship, do an internship. His name is Tom Gershik, another high regarded person. And so he's like, the experience, you will always treasure that over just an elective. Do that. So I interned with Department of Children and Family Services, and I did an intact internship. And so with intact, you try to keep the kids to the best of your ability inside the home with parents. So provide services for the children inside the home, so they're not removed like as in foster care. And once again, I really liked this because it was hands-on experience working with kids. And it was really figuring out what is the actual need of this family, and let's provide resources as much as we can and kind of get the family stable. So from that, I learned I really like working individually with kids. So I might as well go get my master's in social work so then I could someday counsel. So went to school to do that, to be able to get my master's. And once I was there, I decided, yes, I want to do counseling and I want to do kids. So all of my studies were focused on trauma, crisis, assessing children. So really meeting with kids to figure out what is the root issue of whatever is going on, and really making sure that I say this all the time, but really seeing that kids are seen and heard, and really making sure that you are an advocate for them until they can advocate for themselves. So empowering them, um, and just really having just the individual needs to address like the whole child. And so I eventually worked at the Carrie Lynn Children's Center, where they do sex abuse and physical abuse of children. And that was really it really got to the core of what I like to do, and to be able to, like I said, just be able to advocate for kids. So,
So, so for people that don't really know what Carrie Lynn, because Carrie Lynn obviously has a very unique work that they do, and years ago when I first opened up KP, I had been asked to be on their volunteer. When they used to have the advisory boards,
yep,
and I was involved with that for a few years. Katie's Zuick,
yep,
am I saying her name right?
yeah, Zuki.
Zuki. And sorry about that, Katie. But she's a great lady and's run a great program over there. Working at Carrie Lynn, maybe just give us a little bit, give the listeners a little bit about what does Carrie Lynn do and some of their background and how they fit as part of the fabric of helping children in this particular area.
Yeah, so the Carrie Lynn Children's Center is the child advocacy center for our county. And the Carrie Lynn Center is named after a little girl. Her name is Carrie Lynn Gaines. So she was murdered in our city. And when she was missing. So first, her family members would say, like, we haven't seen Carrie Lynn in a long time. And then over time, her mom would say, oh, she's here, or that she's with this relative, or just really not conclusive of where is she, why can we not find her. And so eventually they did an investigation and found out that Carrie Lynn had been beaten to death, and she was buried in the backyard. She was wrapped up in a little baby blanket, and she was deceased. And so the Carrie Lynn Center was started in part with the state's attorney at the time, which was Paul Logley, started to really have a place where kids would be looked for. So if something was wrong with a child, somebody had a concern, there was an agency that was going to do something about it, which is what the Carrie Lynn Center does. So as soon as somebody suspects that a child has been physically abused, sexually abused, some kind of trauma, they contact DCFS, which the number is 1-800-25-ABUSE if anybody needs it. But they contact the hotline, report that, and depending on what the allegations are, or what is assumed to have happened or alleged to have happened to a child, they come to the Carrie Lynn Center. And they have amazing staff. Everybody in the building is trauma trained. Everybody inside the building has specific training to be able to work with children. So there's forensic interviewers who perform interviews that are on a two-sided mirror, So that way children can be recorded when they give their interview, which at first people get kind of hesitant of like, oh, recording children. However, this is so a child only tells their story one time. So if you are a 10-year-old female who's been sexually abused, you don't want to tell law enforcement, tell the prosecutor, tell a social worker, like you want to tell it one time and that's it. And the people are trained to receive the information, so to minimize trauma for children disclosing. And then from there, there's counseling that can be provided. The Carrie Lynn Center works in accordance with Merit, which is the part of that does physical exams on children with Dr. Davis and Shannon Kruger. And so they do exams on the children as well. And so everybody who interacts with the case are all trauma trained and able to do what's in the best interest of the child, only best interest of the child.
Gotcha. And again, I imagine just knowing the involvement that I've been involved there, and when I've made referrals and had clients that were from KP that had experiences with Carrie Lynn. In almost, I can't think of anybody who had a bad experience. I mean, it's a tough situation if you're there, but they've all been in every experience that I can think of. Everybody's under difficult circumstances been as you said earlier, seen and heard. And so that, which I think is the key.
Yes, and Kathy Pomahawk provided me a stat last year for there was a domestic violence march downtown, and she's the executive director of Carrie Lynn, and she provided a stat that I think it was almost 700 kids that utilized the Carrie Lynn Center last year.
Wow.
So a lot of children. So
That's it's extremely unfortunate, but I'm glad Carrie Lynn Center can be there for those children.
mhm.
So so kind of bringing us up to where you're at now. So so you have kind of a unique position. I mean, as it says, you know, as it goes, this is a pretty unique time period. I mean, I think of when we first met and what we were trying, you know, what was happening at Lincoln and with the Rockford Public School System when Brian Weevil was doing the Parent University and trying to reach out for us to be, you know, be resources for the parents as well as for the students. But you know, now with the pandemic and how that's impacting the schools, I mean, there's so many things that are starting off the school year definitely different than than 9 months ago. But why don't you first tell us what you're doing? You have a unique role. You're working. Yeah. Why don't you just go ahead and explain what you're doing now?
Okay. So my title is Director of Middle School Success with United Way of Rock River Valley. And so I'm a licensed clinical social worker that is housed, I like to say, at Lincoln Middle School, in which I had said before, it's really kind of a weird thing that, so I was the first set of sixth graders who attended middle school at Lincoln. So it used to be seventh and eighth. So when I became a sixth grader, I was the first grade. I think I weighed like maybe 80 pounds and, you know, probably 4 foot something. And so when students come in and they're like, Miss Nicole, you don't understand. I'm like, no, I do understand. This building is really big and it's really scary. I understand. But so yes, I'm situated at Lincoln Middle School and we're doing a program called Move the Middle. And so with this position, the goal is to increase graduation rates. So graduation rates in Rockford Public Schools is 66% currently. And so the goal, when we asked our donors and people who care about United Way, what it is that we really wanted to do and how did we want to make an impact and like kind of leave our mark, and it was graduation rates. And so, so this program, so my position or what I do is I review attendance, behavior, course performance, and social emotional data to identify which students are off track. And so once those students have been identified to be off track, I try to provide resources. So I collaborate, you know, I meet individually with students, I contact parents, I meet collaboratively with counselors, teachers, support staff, really anybody that will talk to me with a release to be able to figure out kind of what's the root issue. So if a student is let's say running late and I look through the data and I see, you know, so-and-so is almost an hour late, you know, twice a week. And then the days that they, you know, that they might miss a lot of days. And so I'm going through the data to kind of figure that out. We'll come to find out students staying home to babysit. And so, okay, so your grades are slipping, so you're off track in grades and you're also off track in attendance because of an issue that's really greater than you. As a 12-year-old, I mean, what resource would you have other than to do exactly what your family needs? So then we're going to put in resources and provide childcare resources to the family to be able to have that student's attendance go back up. This program is called the Early Warning Response System. Like it's based out of research from Johns Hopkins University. And studies show if a student is off track in attendance, behavior, or their math and English grade, so it could be one of the three, their probability of graduating on time or within 1 year of their peer is like 10 to 20%. And so to think that, because I work specifically with sixth graders, I'm working on actually adding a new achievement advocate for the seventh graders. But for sixth graders to think if you're 11 and you're bullied in school, so you decide to stay home because that feels safer to you, that you would maybe not graduate high school, you know, in 12th grade, it's so alarming that I am so excited this program is there to really collaborate with, can't say that word today, with RPS to be able to do this and to really put funding in the schools I'm so excited about it.
You know, when you, Nicole, when you're talking about that research out of John Hopkins, um, regarding the idea that if someone is being unsuccessful in one of those three areas, that may leave such an impression on them that it's hard to um, undo that impression, right? That it leaves a lasting impression that then contributes to their high school performance. And I think of, you know, different stories that I've listened to, and even myself. But how many times do we have an experience, either a social emotional experience or an academic experience, or something's going on in our home in middle school, and we make a decision at that time that that's that's it. That's how I view myself, and that's the way it is. I mean, a silly example, but I remember in seventh grade, because that was the first year we could play sports. I made a decision that I wasn't going to be good at basketball, so I went out for wrestling. But I'd never played basketball, so I don't know how this 11-year-old knew I wasn't going to be, or 12 years old, whatever it was, how I wasn't going to be good at basketball or baseball. But that was the decision I made, so I picked an alternate sport. Um,
Mhm.
and then I never played, so then I guess proved the theory right. I never became good at those sports because I never played. But I, I think that that's probably what happens to a lot of people. They experience something or make a decision about something, and then reinforce the story that they're telling themselves, and then
Mhm.
it becomes their truth, and then may impact, you know, not graduating from high school, or not thinking that they're college material, whatever it may be.
Mhm. Well, and I think some students as well, their circumstances are just so much larger than they are that it would be impossible for them to figure it out. So I am a college educated, full-time employee with a car, and I live in a house. And some of these situations, I don't know what I personally would do either. So, students who have substance abuse use inside their home, domestic violence inside their home, they also are sometimes homeless. They don't have access to a washing machine, don't have school supplies, and their bellies aren't full. How would anybody be successful the next day at work? And we're all grown adults. And so it's so there just needs to be more resources, and there needs to be people to check, because some students are like, how did you even know I was late to school? I'm like, oh, I'm always checking, I'm always here, kind of make it a joke. But some of them truly are like, how do you know? Like, how does my teacher know that I'm not paying attention in class? Like, well, we all care about you a lot, so that's our whole job, is to pay attention to you and is to care about you. um, our principal, who's amazing, Kirsten Garrigan, she has said over and over, students get in fights at school because they know we will break it up. They know it's safe. They know that we are paying attention to them. And so we are our safe space. We are their safe space. We are their safe people, which also makes it really difficult during these times of remote learning, some in person, some not. This kind of uncertainty for students and for staff is that a lot of staff had anxiety of, how are my students doing? I can't see them. I can't interact with them the same. And people adjusted absolutely during the time that we did remote before. Um, but it's a challenge, that's for sure.
So okay, so let's go there for a second. So, let me first ask, how long have you been with United Way, and how long has Move the Middle program been at Lincoln?
So I started actually with United Way August 19th of last year, so I'm
Oh,
almost at my 1 year
okay,
mark.
yeah,
And so the program started in the fall of last year.
okay.
But it went so well that we got approval from Rockford Public Schools and from United Way to be able to add an additional staff. So that way the sixth graders that were in the program last year will continue to be followed. And it's the entire grade. It's not just certain students in the grade. If somebody becomes off track and an intervention is provided, they get back on track, they would still be followed, but it's not that a certain student who wasn't off track couldn't become off track and then be able to get services. But so that way there'd be two achievement advocates in theory in the building. And we hope to be able to expand it to other middle schools, because I think each middle school has its own unique challenges. Lincoln is situated in very low socioeconomic statuses. So our needs are going to be obviously greater or different than Kennedy's versus greater different than Eisenhower. So that would be the like long-term plan as we continue on.
Sure. So speaking of, I mean, this last year was your first year in this particular program. And then in March, we have a quarter left. The fourth quarter left, approximately. And now the thing that you normally rely heavily on, which is student contact and looking at some of those ways of tracking them, that all went away. Or I'm assuming it went away. I don't know. But so what was it like? Yeah, what was that experience like last spring? Being in the position where you couldn't do your job the way that you had been doing it up until that point.
Yeah, I think that it made us as staff work together much stronger than we even were before. So we had been meeting once a week as a team. But this time when we met once a week via Zoom, we had so many more things to discuss. And has so-and-so been able to talk to this student? Has so-and-so heard from this student? And we started tracking engagement, which I really, really loved. So instead of did somebody come to school that day, or did somebody kind of connect the day? No, were they engaged in each of the courses that they were supposed to be engaged in? So I really liked that way to measure for students, but I think it made us work harder together. I think there were just different challenges. So we focused a lot on resources. So what food resources can we provide to assist with insecurity, or unemployment resources, or things that we previously didn't necessarily focus on as much. We still did groups via Zoom, so I still got to meet with students, and as soon as I would see them pop up in the waiting room, I'm like, oh, okay, they're there, and I'm excited to see them. And we did show and tell, which is like, when can you ever really do that in middle school? So I got to see animals of students and just random things that they have at their house. So it was just like a different kind of contact and a different way that we all needed to, so we like divided up the students, for example. So that way everybody got an interaction with somebody in the building. So if a teacher had a concern, they would let me know, or let a counselor know, or let administration know, just to make sure that everybody really was taken care of, how we do inside the building during normal, or quote unquote normal times.
Sure. Sure. Okay. And I think for so many times, as people got through that time period, and I think for some people it was just getting through that time period. They may not have really realized how some of our most vulnerable individuals in our city, our students, how it increased their vulnerability, because, like you said, school for them is one of their safest places that they have throughout the day, throughout the week, and now that's the physical buildings removed from them, and so it's going to be different. And I know for myself, as well as some other educators, they were concerned about. Concerned about that, what may be happening that we're not able to see like we were before. So thank goodness the technology was advanced as it is, so that we were able to do Zoom, or do kind of teleconference aspects of it. So now moving into this school year, and I know this has been like a moving, it's changes, and it still may change again before the first day. What is it looking like moving into this coming 2021 school year?
Yeah, so in terms of sixth grade, well, right now we're doing a 4-day program. It's called SOS Jumpstart Summer Program, I think. So the 4 days this week, it's in person for students at Lincoln to be able to get some extra assistance with reading and math. And then we do like a social emotional activity / snack, just to get students like, all right, we're ready to learn. We're getting ready to start the school year. So we're doing that for 4 days this week. Next week, we're doing a sixth grade boot camp for 2 days, really bringing students in that would like to be able to be in person, bring them in, give them a tour of the building. We can't use lockers necessarily right now, but when we can, so we're going to teach them how to do locks, how to organize all their materials, how do we do stuff with our schedule. So many different, talk about my program, that's another big one too, talk about discipline, behavior, safety protocol. really get students as much ahead of us, like as a jump start as we can before the school year starts. And then, yeah, like I said, we're working diligently inside our building to figure out what's the safest way to do things. How will children perceive what we're doing? So to make sure that we're thinking about kind of any concerns students or parents have. But yeah, moving forward, I one of my big things that I want to try to figure out a way to do, and we're working with data to do that, is to figure out engagement. And so I'm working on possibly having like a dashboard program that we would use in accordance with what Rockford Public Schools already has, but to be able to track their engagement. Because if someone's remote for 5 days, that's their attendance is relevant, but also not as relevant because they could log in whenever they have the ability to do so. But I want to see, are you engaged, or are you, maybe needing a little bit of extra assistance, or however I can provide. Social emotional support, those are still going to happen. We're just gonna have to figure out a different way to do them. So we had Rosecrans doing a group called Overcoming Obstacles inside Lincoln. And so that works on decision-making skills, getting along with peers, getting along with teachers, goal setting, organization, all kinds of things. And so we're just going to figure out a different way to provide that group. Same with individual counseling. We had that with Children's Lemonade, just going to figure out a different way to do it. And so it's not that, 2020, 2021 school year is canceled. That's not it. We're going to just get much more creative and maybe meet needs at a better way than we were able to before. Because I think that this could be a time where you could use creativity and you could just think of things differently. We've been doing school the same way since forever. And so maybe we need a new way to do it. Maybe, I know some students loved remote. They said that they loved that so much more than school, like in-person school. And so maybe this will be good for some students. So.
Well, I know that you've had to endure a couple of my classes that I taught, so you know that that's what we talk about all the time. That in the midst of this disorder that's happening, it's going to force us. It's either going to allow us to stay stuck, which everybody has the right to stay stuck if they want to, or it's going to provide an opportunity for us to think outside of our of that box and be innovative and be creative. And I think kind of like your uh, you know you didn't call it your personal mission, but that theme that seems to be wherever you go, it follows of wanting and advocating for children to be seen and heard. That has been a central theme that you've talked about, and then you're not going to let the circumstances limit you and how that's going to be. Yes, there's challenges, but there's also ways of making that connection, and ways of still connecting, still looking at data, and still reaching out, and you allowing the students to know that they can be seen and heard.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yes, I absolutely agree.
so I think if I understood what you were saying, that so this is the beginning of the second week of the kind of onboarding of the sixth graders. Is that what you were saying?
Yeah, yep. So this week has sixth, seventh, and eighth graders are a part of the programming, but
Okay.
next week would specifically just be sixth graders, because we're in that transition period, which is very challenging for lots of students coming in sixth grade. So middle school is tough in general, but
Yep.
sixth grade especially. You've been in it. Our building is very intimidating. It is
Hmm.
very large. There are a lot of stairs, and so learning locks, passing periods. I mean, there's so many things that when you're in elementary school, you're more focused on like, this is our whole class. And so, but in middle school, you really become an individual because you're in a class, but you might go to another class where you don't know anybody, and you mix children all throughout the day. And so we really want to try to give them as much information up front as we can. Like color coordinating your supplies, for example. We know math is red. So your red notebook, your red folder, you take all of that to math, or however we can get through to them to be able to organize, because then that's habits and skills that they can take all the way up, as far as is they're with us and continue on to whatever high school that they go to.
Sure, absolutely. And I think going back to what you said, that the research was showing is that intervening, and I think that's what some people don't really know what we mean when we say intervene. To intervene is to step in and coach someone or teach someone how to do something. And not that there's only one way to do something, but they have to learn a way before they can adopt or adapt to their way, right? But
Yeah.
they have to learn a basic way of doing it first, and then they can add to that. But at some point, we have to kind of breathe into them and speak into them, and showing them a way to organize, and not assume that everyone knows how to organize their locker or their notebooks when they come in sixth grade. Um,
Yes.
and I think so. I was going to ask you, how has having the students in person, how is that? Well, number one, how does that feel? And number two, how did it go the first week in a day?
Yeah. So so far, so today we had the programming start. So we had 11 kids, and it went really good. They seemed very happy. The sixth graders were a little bit nervous about the building,
Sure.
but we showed them where things were and whatnot. But they seemed to really enjoy being in school. There was one student that did have anxiety, kind of about how things were going to work and what it's going to be like, which is normal, absolutely normal. We played games, so they played games with their masks, and we socially distanced. We ate snacks socially distanced, and so far that has been it was fine. It was very different to wear a mask all day, interacting with children, because I have yet to do that. And it makes you a little sad, only because it is scary starting school and you don't know anybody there, on top of having to do a brand new thing. But children are so resilient, and they were fine. You give them a snack and play a game, and you know they did well. So
Sure. Well, and I think that element of not only utilizing, because I do think children have a great ability to adapt and to be able to figure out how to play and have make something fun. And then with that is that opportunity to develop resiliency out of that. And so when they come across another thing that seems to be some huge obstacle in their way, they can bring them back to this time period. Remember how you overcame
yeah,
you
yeah.
know whatever it may have been. So Nicole, is how, if someone wanted to get involved or was interested or wanted to support moving the middle, or just interested in hearing more about it, what would be the best way for people to learn more about moving the middle or try to help or support that?
Yeah, so I can give my email at the end of this too, but you can always go on United Way's page. So we have a specific portion of United Way's page that's for Move the Middle, and has everything about Lincoln, kind of what we're doing there. This year being how it is, volunteering isn't an option. So Rockford Public Schools at this time aren't letting volunteers in. But if somebody wants to donate, we have a specific portion of our funding that is just for middle school. So sometimes we have people say, I'm a retired teacher and I can't help anymore, but I would really like to help with your new initiative. And so somebody can donate just directly to Move the Middle program. Um, uh, yeah, I mean, people have had really unique ideas about things they want to do. So doing like gloves, hat, mittens, coats, drives, just donating in general. So here's $100 towards this function, something like that. And I hate to be the one that asks for money, but I always need money for my program.
Sure, sure.
So we fund programs inside Lincoln. We fund training for teachers. So we did a trauma training last year for teachers to be able to get trauma training. I might possibly do a self-care training for teachers. Coming up, I did one for the mayor's office on domestic violence and human trafficking, put on a training. And part of that was a self-care excerpt. And so it was for teachers, but also how teachers could support students, how teachers could support parents. So we do lots of training. So food, always, food for events and whatnot.
Sure.
Like Parent University, we provided food for people to come. And so yeah, so I would just say if people are willing to donate, it could be $20. It could be an annual gift. It could be monthly, however people feel the need to assist.
Why don't we, while we're on that track, why don't you go ahead and just give your email address so if people wanted
Okay.
to reach that, or and then also just unitedway.org, right?
Yeah, UnitedWayRRV dot org, and then my email is Nicole, so Nicole at UnitedWayRRV.org. So in case somebody forgets that, you can go type United Way Rock River Valley, and all staff are listed. So my name is listed. My phone number at Lincoln, because that's usually where I am. My phone number is listed there, so people can reach me there. I also have my RPS email, which is Nicole, Nicole dot Bennett, Bennett at RPS205.com. So whichever
Perfect.
works.
Perfect. Well, Nicole, I appreciate you coming on and sharing what you're trying to, what you and what the United Way and what Lincoln in general. When I was there in the wintertime, I was really impressed with the staff that I got to meet that day, and I know a couple of the individuals that are there. The individual that runs the in-school suspension,
Mhm.
Dr. Verona, and
Yeah.
and your nurse, Lee Sanderson, are both personal friends. So and then meeting Mrs. Garrigan and her vision of what she is trying to do. I was very impressed with the team that you guys have put together, and I can definitely hear in your voice the excitement of you being there and some of the things that you're trying to do. Um, and kind of going back to what you had said, what maybe started this thing all along with the idea of believing in your heart as a small person, and then definitely later when you were in Africa, as well as when you worked with DCFS, is that the idea of children really were created to be seen and heard, and how can you be an advocate for that? And it sounds like that's exactly what is allows you to get up in the morning and continue doing what you're doing. So I appreciate everything you do and coming on the show. If
Yeah.
there was anything that you wanted to kind of leave with today, what would be something you would want to leave the listeners today with?
What a great question. I don't know. I think that one thing that's really helped me lately, and what I've been trying to anybody I interact with, is just to make sure that everybody's kind of giving grace to the people they're interacting with. So whether that's your own personal family, staff, at anywhere you interact with, people at a grocery store, whatever, I think that everybody is really, really genuinely trying to do the best that they can right now. And so, we're diligently working, for example, at Lincoln, of how to do it the very best. So we try to give each other grace of like, I have no idea how to do this, but we're sure going to figure it out. So I think, students trying to do the very best they can, like, let's make sure, as people who have children, people who interact with them, like, they really are trying to do the best that they can. And so, just that we be patient during this time, and that we, give people the benefit of the doubt. I think that everybody has their own personal struggles, if not 5, 10, 15 personal struggles. And so my husband and I have had lots of discussions of like, wow, today was really rough, but we're going to get back up. We're going to, and, but I think it's acknowledging that it is really, really tough right now. And so, not trying to talk away somebody's pain, not trying to solve somebody's pain, just really sitting with people, letting them know that you're here, that you're listening to them. And yeah, just knowing everybody's doing the very best they can. And if they didn't today, maybe tomorrow they can. But,
Sure.
just grace. That's all.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate, Nicole. The other piece is that there's a lot of people may not hear behind the scenes of what's going on with educators and what's happening, and just hearing what you're doing and what the staff in general is trying to do at Lincoln. And that's not to say that I know a lot of schools are doing what they
Yes.
can do, but what specifically you guys are doing in the midst of the circumstances, how can we continue to meet the needs of the students as well as the staff during this time period, and not only be safe with it, but how do we make it a better experience, that maybe this is an opportunity to do that we wouldn't have had if this didn't happen. So um,
Absolutely.
Well,
Yeah.
once again, thank you for doing what you're doing, but then also thank you for being on the show and being able to share that. So,
Yeah,
um,
thank you for having me. I love to talk, so anybody that will listen to me,
well,
I appreciate it.
well, I'll hold you to that because sometime in the future, I'd like to have you come back and maybe in the spring and kind of give us an update about how things are going, and how things have been kind of working this year, and now you're into year two. What kind of movement you're starting to see? So again,
That
thank you,
sounds good.
and you have a good school year.
All right, thank you so much.
Okay, bye bye.
Bye.